This podcast is part of the Batman Universe Podcast Network, hosted by the BatmanUniverse.net. Check out everything related to Batman and the entire Bat family at the BatmanUniverse.net, including news and original content related to comics, movies, television, merchandise, video games, and more. Also, check out some of the other unique podcasts that TBU has to offer. Consider supporting this podcast by becoming a patron on Patreon. Even $1 can go a long way in supporting this content that you enjoy. Look for a link over at thebatmanuniverse.net to offer your support now. And now, on with the show.
In 2008, a podcast was created with one goal: to bring Bat fans around the world news related to movies, comics, video games, television, merchandise, and so much more. And now, the Batman Universe Podcast has returned.
Hello everyone and welcome to the latest episode of the TBU Podcast. I'm Dusitn and joining me is BJ and Adil, and we are talking about all of the news from the past couple of weeks. If you haven't been around, it's kind of been a bit of a slow news week. If you haven't been seeing what's been happening over on the website, there really hasn't been a ton of news. We've got some delays, we've got some announcements, and a certain surprise when it comes to television that we'll discuss here in a minute. But it's just been kind of a slow time, and I think part of the reason, at least when it comes to Gunn Watch, that it's been slower is because James Gunn's been in the middle of promoting Guardians of the Galaxy, so he's dedicating a lot of his focus to that at the moment. But the movie is about to come out this Friday, and as it releases, that is his final project over at Marvel. And we know that he's still obviously working on other things. We've got some comments in Gunn Watch where he talks about some different projects related to DC and specifically his Superman project and things like that. So it's not that he's, completely forgetting about DC while he promotes Guardians. He's still got, a specific goal in mind when it comes to his projects. But that said, I think that's part of the reason why we haven't had as much news. That, and we just have other projects and things like that are just still kind of hovering and waiting for the time being. So, with that being said, let's jump into our news for the last couple of weeks. The first thing we've got is Suicide Squad Kill the Justice League has officially been delayed. We already knew that it was delayed, but now it's delayed even further. So it turns out it's actually going to be coming out now in February of 2024. So they've delayed it a whole nother year from the last release date that it had, although I guess technically, if we want to, pick apart the actual release dates that they've previously announced, it was supposed to be, I believe, like May, and then they pushed it to October, and now they've pushed it again to February. Now, there's no specific reasoning specifically for it, but the official release said, "We have made the tough but necessary decision to take the time needed to work out getting the game to be the best quality experience for players. Thank you to our amazing community for the continued support, patience, and understanding. There is much to share in the months ahead, and we look forward to seeing you in Metropolis next year." And the game is now going to be February 2nd, 2024 is the official release date. Now, interestingly, when you look at that release date, it does fall right in line with a release that Warner Brothers had this year, the Hogwarts Legacy game, which did very, very well in that release window. So there's that. But the other side of it is, will they be adjusting some of the things that some people have complained about? We know right before the last delay was announced, where it got pushed to October, there were some complaints online about the microtransactions, specifically buying costumes and things like that. We've already talked about that side of it, or the microtransactions and that controversy, but I think ultimately I'm curious to know if there's some other aspect of the game that could be being adjusted. Although, let's be honest, a year is not a lot to change, entire gameplay mode when it comes to that. So, needless to say, the game is now coming in February of 2024.
I'll have to wait till February 2024 to get it. I'd rather have them take the time to fix out any kinks that they have, but and rather than rushing it out and having it kind of be like a crap game.
Yeah, I think I'd rather them take the time as well. I think in 2023, one of the things we're seeing is a lot of these sort of AAA games coming out before they're ready. Jedi Survivor just came out a couple days ago. Reviews on Steam for PC are not good. A lot of people complaining. There's a lot of bugs. The game is broken. If people remember Cyberpunk, when it came out, people said it was broken as well. And there have been other games that have really come out that have been kind of unfinished and incomplete. So I would rather they take the time to get it right.
I'm okay with them taking the time to get it right. I guess my hiccup with all of that is I just don't like the idea of putting dates on things in the first place, because the reason that I guess I have a problem with them holding back the game until next year is not so much about, well, let's not release a game that's not finished, but let's remember this game was originally supposed to release like in 2021, I believe, was the original time frame they were supposed to release. And then because of COVID, they pushed it back to 2022. Then it was 2023. Now it's 2024. By the time this game actually comes out, it's going to be 4 years after the original release was supposed to happen. And that's the problem that I have, because it's like, or even if it was 3 years, if it was originally supposed to be 2021, I just, that's a long time to sit there and say, hey, we've got to get this right. We've got to change something, because they've been clearly working on this game, because Rocksteady has not been working on any other games since the end of the Arkham games, which was, at this point, it was 2016, I think the last one came out. So I want the game to be good. I want the game to be successful and not have to run into a problem where a lot of people are complaining that it's not working the way it's supposed to. But at the same time, I just have to wonder, what can you constantly do for an additional 3 years to change the game without fundamentally changing the overall gameplay in some way?
Yeah, I think, it's hard to know exactly why that happens. I mean, I don't like it either, but I think it's just kind of like the opaque nature of the industry, where I don't know if it's their development team being a little slow. We know, of course, in the video game industry, there's a lot of crunch, and oftentimes the game developers are kind of overworked. But then the other side is, well, maybe it's the business people over-promising or being overly optimistic about the release deadline. And then the people on the technical side are like, wow, we can't get this done in time. So I have no idea where the fault truly lies. But yeah, it's not a good look.
All right, so with that, the next bit of news we have is kind of the unexpected news. So a lot of people may remember us talking about this back in August, but it might have gotten kind of forgotten just because at the time of the announcement, it was coming down around the same time that the Batgirl film was announced to be canceled. But there was another project at the time that supposedly had been canceled as well, which was an animated movie, or a holiday special, I guess is the best way to put it, because I don't think it was a full-length film, but there was an animated special that was coming out at the time that was called Merry Little Batman, and the premise of it was that Damian Wayne lives with Bruce Wayne and is a small child, much smaller than he appears in the comics, and it's the holiday season, and there wasn't much other than that. But that project was announced as a HBO Max exclusive project that was announced when HBO Max first launched, or announced a bunch of projects that most of them have yet to see the light of day. But alongside the Batgirl film, there was a Scoob sequel that was supposed to be holiday themed as well. That also was canceled. And at the time, that's one of the reasons we were talking about for multiple episodes last fall about, well, what's going to happen to Caped Crusader, since it was supposed to be an HBO Max exclusive, and now they're getting rid of all these HBO Max exclusive projects. Well, interestingly, we found out that Caped Crusader is going to Amazon Prime, and another project is also going to be going over to Amazon. This Merry Little Batman holiday special is actually going to be heading over to Amazon Prime. But more unexpectedly, coming from that announcement, is that not only will the holiday special be there, but also a spin-off series called Bat Family. Now, there's not a whole lot of details for the actual project. The basically, Merry Little Batman says they see Damian Wayne left alone in Wayne Manor on Christmas Eve, and he must become Little Batman to protect his home from Gotham City, his home and Gotham City for the night. Bat Family will see Batman, Little Batman, and Alfred trying to navigate what it means to be a super family. It's a little bit, there's not much to go on. There's no release dates. If I had to put some money on it, I would assume that the Merry Little Batman could end up being a project that releases actually this coming holiday season, just because it was in the works for a longer extended amount of time. The question is, will they release it this holiday season if the spin-off series isn't really into full production? But based off of the fact that Amazon has already picked it up, leads me to believe it already was in production. They were just shopping around as a potential project for other studios or other networks or services to jump on, and they would be able to make the licensing rights. Now, they also released a image, which inadvertently may become one of the cover art for this episode, just because this is a little piece of news and it's kind of a funny image. But they're going for some very interesting stylistic choices with this. Alfred is a hunchback who has what appears to be a turkey face, and then you've got Bruce Wayne, who is extremely bearded, and Damian's just, he's a kid who looks like he's wearing a pair of Batman pajamas. But based off of the announcement and this one image, what do you guys think?
Oh, man. The image, I guess, I don't know, just looking at that image, like, I assume it's going to be more adult humor. Like, I don't think it's going to be for kids. And, I mean, the image is like, when I saw it, I didn't think it was real. Like, I don't know if right when I saw it, I shared it to you guys. Like, what is this? Like, I was kind of speechless and dumbfounded. I'm still am, quite frankly.
Yeah, I have no idea who it's going to be for. I actually assumed it was going to be for kids. But I mean, it could be either way. Honestly, looking at the art style, it kind of looks like. I mean, I'm
like
not
a
a
Rick
fan
and
of
Morty type thing.
Yeah, exactly, right. Like it could be either or, and then, I mean, I'm just not a fan of the art style, so I guess we'll see where it goes. I mean, I hope it's good, but probably not something that I personally am going to check out.
I will say the only thing that I was able to gather outside of the insane look of Alfred that is so anti-typical of what we have come to know with Alfred is that Alfred, because of his poor health state based off of this image, he clearly is not doing his job very well, because above the bookshelf there's a bunch of cobwebs. And it's just amusing because he clearly isn't doing his job very well, because I don't think a cobweb would ever be in a house that Alfred is maintaining.
Maybe this Alfred's suffering from McGregor syndrome. He's in the final stages of it.
I think the one thing maybe that, if I can say, maybe that Dustin, that you liked, and those of us who are on the TBU Discord server can probably guess, is that Bruce Wayne is bearded. So I think that's probably something you enjoyed.
Yep, I can get some more bearded Batman pictures. For those of you who are unfamiliar, I go by Bearded Bat Chief. So, and I use a picture from Batman Venom of Batman coming out of the Batcave with like a 2-month-old beard all over his scraggly face. All right, so the next thing we've got is there is the last bit of news we have before we go into the Gunn Watch is there is a new graphic novel that was announced from DC. This is actually just popped up yesterday. We're recording this on May 2nd, so this was May 1st when this got announced. But there's a project that has been announced. It's called Barkham Asylum, and it's a new middle grade book that begs the question: is the Joker's dog Jester a good boy? So essentially, the idea of this is that when you are a villain, you always have a dog or a animal. Well, it looks like they're all dogs except for just a couple of characters. But you have a pet, and when the criminal or villain gets arrested and goes to jail, well, their dogs have to go somewhere too. So they go to Barkham Asylum. And the book is being put together by writer and artist Yehundi Mercado, who previously worked on Shazam Thundercrack, and this book is coming in February of 2024. They did release some art from the series. It's kind of unique. It's different. It's interesting. All the dogs are all the characters you would expect. Joker, Bane, Harley Quinn, Poison Ivy, Riddler. We've got Two-Face, Scarecrow, what I assume to be King Shark, and then Killer Croc all make an appearance in dog form, or, pet form, I guess is the best way to put it. But this project looks kind of interesting. Obviously, it's also geared towards a younger audience, but it definitely is some unique art that, I don't think I would have been expecting a project like this coming from DC, let's say 10 years ago, when the New 52 was underway and all they cared about was coming up with the deepest and darkest sides of the DC universe.
Yeah, I could see this book being a big hit at the Scholastic Book Fair, like around schools and stuff. I think it's kind of right up like that alley for younger readers.
Yeah, I have nothing more to add. I think it'd probably be good for the younger fans. But I will say, on the topic of Joker's dogs, Joker did have dogs in The Dark Knight, and I don't think they were good boys.
It's true. All right, so jumping over to Gunn Watch, we've got a couple of little updates here and there. The very first thing we've got is right after we recorded the last episode, they being DC, announced the full cast of Creature Commandos, and there's a huge group of actors that are attached to this, and some of these names are going to be kind of interesting because when you think about these actors, you're going to think, oh, that's not a voice actor. That's somebody who I've come to know on the big screen, which makes sense because, as they have said, the voice actors who are voicing characters within the projects will also be appearing in live action form in the future when these characters, or if these characters make it to a live action version of these characters in any of the other films that are coming. So we've got we've got Sean Gunn as Weasel, who's reprising his role from the Suicide Squad. Frank Grillo is going to be playing Rick Flag Sr. Grillo, in the last Gunn Watch, last episode that we had a Gunn Watch, he was talking about how he was involved with DC, but had not said what character he was going to be playing. Maria Bakalova is going to be playing Princess Alana Rostovic. Indira Varma is going to be playing the Bride. Zoe Chow is going to be Nina Mazursky. Alan Tudyk is going to be Dr. Phosphorus. David Harbour is going to be Eric Frankenstein. And Sean Gunn will also be playing G.I. Robot. And then Steve Agee will be playing his role of John Economos in the show as well. So, kind of an interesting cast of characters. Some of these characters are going to be newer. Not every single character is normally associated with the Creature Commandos within the comics that the Creature Commandos have existed in prior. But do any of the names stand out to you? I mean, the one that stands out to me, at least immediately, is David Harbour as Eric Frankenstein, because that's probably one of the ones where it's like he played Hellboy in the last Hellboy film, and it's almost as like someone saw Hellboy and was like, hey, he'd be a great Frankenstein.
Yeah, definitely David Harbour. I mean, he's in all the things I've ever kind of seen him in, he's great in Stranger Things. He's good in the Black Widow movie, and as Red Guardian, I think he's going to be in the Thunderbolts movie for Marvel when that comes out. So he's going to be, who knows how long his role as Frankenstein is in Creature Commandos, but he could be doing both DC and Marvel at the same time. So that's kind of interesting.
Yeah, David Harbour is a big name, for sure. And then Alan Tudyk as well. People are probably familiar with him from the Doom Patrol show. And also he was in that Doom TV show Powerless, I think as a relative of Bruce Wayne.
Yes.
To me, he's always Steve the Pirate from Dodgeball. He's always Steve the Pirate to me.
He does have some good like comedic chops in a very like kind of classic way. Like he's not it's not juvenile comedy. And then obviously Indira Varma, people are probably familiar with her from Game of Thrones, etc. And what I really love about this is the concept of having an actor who is going to voice the character in the animated version, but then also potentially play a live action version of the character, and having that continuity, I think, is really important.
It makes it actually feel like it's connected. And, while to a degree, I would love to sit here and say that it's never been done before, but obviously Marvel did do the What If series, and they did get a lot of the actors who played the characters in the films to voice the characters in the animated show, the What If series. But that said, this is kind of going in reverse. This is taking characters that are going to be in animation first and then turning them potentially into live action stars later on. So it's kind of the reverse, but I like the idea. I will say I like the idea of this team, mostly because while the Suicide Squad is always like a weird, unique group of characters because they're all villains, they are all villains. This one is misunderstood characters, some of which are not villains, and I think it could be really interesting to see villains working alongside heroes, and then Rick Flag Sr. trying to manage them all because it just doesn't work as well as everyone would hope. And I think the idea of just having a bunch of characters that are so incredibly different, from one to the next is going to be really, really cool to see. It's one of the reasons why the Suicide Squad, I kind of enjoyed the cast of characters that they originally had because they were very different. While the Suicide Squad, there was some characters that were different, but the majority of them just had different powers. It wasn't that they were actually different. So I like the idea of having legitimate, completely different characters interacting with each other. A robot with a, fish princess, and a guy who literally walks around with, a flaming skull. It's just kind of a cool idea. All right, next up we've got so there was a big announcement that came out on April 12th in addition to the Creature Commando news. There was an announcement of everything that's happening with HBO Max. So HBO Max is going to be coming. It's going to become Max. It's no longer going to be called HBO Max. And it's bringing in content from Discovery Plus, and then they're changing some things here and there. But the idea is that they're really going to be pushing hard with Max going forward. Max launches later this month in May, where if you are currently an HBO Max subscriber, it will be updating to Max. And there's some different tiers and pricing. I'm not going to get into all of that because that's not this kind of podcast. But one of the projects that they specifically were talking about during the presentation was the Penguin series that's coming in 2024 officially now. And they showed off the very first trailer from the project, which showcased a lot of different aspects that we have yet to see. So Penguin is really going for, trying to be that new kingpin of Gotham, as it was hinted at the end of the Batman. And with that, there's a lot of characters that are going to be introduced. We already know some of them based off of the casting news that was previously announced. But the first trailer was released, and while it's a teaser trailer, it was really kind of cool to see this character back in live action form, basically within just over a year from the last time we saw this character in the film. So what did you guys think of the trailer?
Yeah, it looked awesome. It was really cool to see Colin Farrell back again. I know there's Sophia Falcone's going to be in it. I think that's going to be awesome. And it was really cool. I think it was in the trailer where it said the next chapter of the Batman saga, and it made it seem like this was really kind of this set of the Batman franchise is going to be kind of, it's really expanding more so than we've ever seen. The Dark Knight trilogy really didn't do this. That was just strictly movies. But with the Batman, we have the movies, obviously, we have the series, we have the Riddler Year One comic written by Paul Dano. So it really feels like they're really expanding this to be even greater. It's kind of like a multimedia franchise now.
Yeah, for sure. I think that's a really unique kind of first time thing that they're doing. And I think the short little teaser that they released looked excellent. There are some really good actors that have signed on for the show. Colin Farrell looks great again in the prosthetics, and he seems to really enjoy playing the character, which kind of fits the character itself. And then I think this type of show, this type of scenario is kind of where Batman and Gotham work best. The kind of classic crime drama. I think that's the way to go, and that's the way that Gotham City and the Batman universe truly shines at its brightest.
I agree completely, and it'll be interesting because this is obviously taking place after the film, but also you would assume it sets some things up for the future of the franchise as well, with the Batman 2 coming out as well. I got to say, like, by far, this is probably one of my most anticipated projects, and also, at least to a degree, fill that gap that we know is coming in 2024, where there's not going to be very many films from DC, but we will have the Joker as well. So between Batman and Joker 2, there's going to be some Batman Universe stuff next year that is definitely going to be worth waiting for. And then from there, we've got even, we could have years. We could have 2025 as Batman 2. We could have 2026 as The Brave and the Bold. And there's all kinds of stuff that could be happening, in the future when it comes to media. I just hope that it stays consistent. That's all I can hope. And I hope that the Penguin series introduces more characters and builds on what we've seen. I mean, we know we're going to see more characters, but it builds on what we've seen in the Batman, where these characters could then obviously still appear in the films, but then branch off and potentially have even more stuff happening, where if the Penguin series makes sense to have it one season now, but then another season later on, as Batman's not as big of a deal in the Penguin series, because Batman's not really putting a lot of focus onto Oswald Cobblepot, then by all means, let's explore a different aspect of the Batman universe, or, some other side of what Gotham City is when Matt Reeves is in charge of the Batman universe. So I'm really looking forward to this. I can't say it enough. I am really looking forward to seeing what they can put together with this project, and what it means for the long-term side of Matt Reeves and the Batman universe. So there's that. Next up, we've got Superman Legacy. They're currently auditioning for the role of Superman, according to Gunn. And somebody asked specifically if Warner Brothers would give James Gunn studio notes on what they would prefer. And he said specifically Warner Brothers would not be giving any sort of notes. He then went on to further say that very rarely does anybody come to him with any sort of notes. He has a plan, and as long as he can pitch his plan well enough, most of the time he hasn't ever had to deal with an issue where they're telling him he has to change something. So that being known, you can imagine that when it comes to DC Studios, there's not going to be a lot of people who are going to be telling him he can't do something, because they'd have to be higher up in the food chain, which would be just basically the CEO of Warner Brothers Discovery, David Zaslav. It wouldn't be able to be Warner Brothers Pictures or somebody like that, because the idea was instating these two people in charge of DC Studios gives them autonomy over the projects that they are actually doing, where it doesn't have a lot of people saying, no, you can't do this because it interferes with something else. Yeah,
if anything, he would be the one giving other people notes. Like, you know what I mean? Like, him and the Peter Safran, like, they are the studio. So I think, if anything, he would be the one giving other people notes, which I don't think he would do, because I think he knows, like, kind of how much that can kind of, like, kill, like, creative freedom by having studio notes all the time.
Yeah, I think, this is the job they hired him to do, right? I don't think it would make sense for them to sort of hire him for this job and then kind of take away the power that they theoretically gave to him, or the purpose of the job itself. I know there have been mistakes made in Warner Brothers management in the past few years, to put it mildly, but I really think that they've kind of realized that and said, okay, we've given him this job, just let him do his thing. All right, and then when speaking with Box Office Pro magazine, the Flash director, Andy Muschietti, specifically was talking about what the differences are between horror films that he's known for coming from before The Flash to The Flash, what approach he took that is different. And he said in a lot of ways it's very similar,
in the sense of like you have to have a really good idea and what you need to go with it. But the one huge difference with The Flash is that because it's such a large studio film, he had the ability to have a much larger budget than he has had on his previous films. And he then went on to say that he utilized that big budget to basically come up with a way to really come up with a unique way of showcasing time travel in a way that hasn't necessarily been seen before. And I don't know exactly what that means because obviously The Flash isn't out yet, but it makes me curious to see what they're going to do with time travel because it is going to be so potentially different because it's such a vital part of what the story is. And that same day that interview came out, we actually had a brand new trailer for The Flash that was released. There's not a ton of new footage in this, but the footage that was released for it, we did see more Ben Affleck Batman. We did see more Michael Keaton Batman. They hinted at the fact that there could be a sequence where Batman 89 and Supergirl are going to be having to fight against each other. There was also an international trailer that released as well that showcases that, unfortunately, it looks like the Ezra Miller or the Flash, or Barry Allen, I should say, the Barry Allen that is from that universe does turn evil and becomes the Dark Flash that the toys have hinted at. So there's that. That's part of the international trailer. So there's kind of a small spoiler there. But overall, I don't know that the trailer did anything to change my mind about wanting to see the film. I still want to see the film. I'm not any more interested or less interested than I was previously before this trailer came out. But still looks good, and I'm still interested in seeing what happens and how this actually ends up being a way for a lot of things to reboot within the DC universe going forward.
Yeah, I'm super excited. I think this second trailer was more obviously Batman focused, especially Keaton, and we got a couple more scenes of Ben Affleck. But yeah, I think the scene like when he obviously says, "Let's get nuts." I don't know if that'll end up in the final movie. That might just be a trailer thing. Who knows? But like that, I think that Batwing scene is cool when he gets tossed from the plane and is kind of flying down with the cape. Like I'm excited for it.
So the trailer, it did change my mind about wanting to see it. Before I was in the camp of like, I'm not really interested in this. I don't think it's going to be good. I'll probably maybe see it when it comes out on digital at some point. But then I saw this trailer and I was like, you know what? Even if I'm not seeing it in theaters, I will definitely check this out on digital. The CGI does look a bit rough in places, but that's something they can fix as they continue to move closer to release. I don't know if it's too close to release, but usually it's something that can be fixed closer to release. But even so, even if the CGI is rough, I think it's probably going to be something worth checking out for any Batman fan. I just wonder, going forward, how much of an impact is this really going to have, even if it does well? Even putting aside all the sort of antics of Ezra Miller in their personal life, I don't know that just from a pure plot perspective, where does this move the universe forward? So I guess we'll have to watch the movie and find out.
They are everybody on Twitter and everywhere you read, James Gunn included, that they are really pumping this out. This is the greatest thing ever, which I think we've talked about before. That could backfire on them. If it's not as good as they say it is. But so far these two trailers, it looks great. It looks like there's a lot going on, and I'm happy to see that you're pumped for it, Adil. And I've been pumped for it these past couple of trailers. But it is they are setting themselves up where if it slips just a little, if the ending doesn't hit right, all of a sudden DC's getting bashed on Twitter again.
Yeah, and a word of caution on that point, because you're absolutely right. I feel like that has been the marketing line for every DC movie since The Dark Knight.
The Dark Knight, yeah.
Right? Every DC movie that's it's the greatest thing since The Dark Knight. It's the best thing ever. And then the movie actually comes out and we find out, it's maybe not the best thing ever. I still haven't seen Black Adam. I will probably never see it. I just don't have any interest in it. But with this, it actually looks to me like from the trailers there could be something there that's worth checking out. I just hope they haven't, as you said, set themselves up for failure.
Yeah, the only thing that I can think of when it comes to all of this is that part of the reason they're saying it is because they really are that confident. I know that they screened the film at CinemaCon, and there was some people who I at least value their opinion. It's not that I hold their opinion in like super high regard, but I value their opinion, who had seen the film and who had said it really is really good. They didn't go as far to say like it's the best superhero film since The Dark Knight, but they said it's a really good film. There was definitely some really, emotional moments that you could see the connection that some people could make to The Dark Knight with the emotional moments. But I think the thing is, I'm not actually too concerned about the film actually being bad. I think the film will be good. What I'm more concerned with is whether or not people will actually go see it. That's really my bigger concern, is if the film doesn't get a ton of people to go watch it and the film flops because just people aren't watching it. And it's not that it's a bad movie. It's just that people aren't watching it. That's really bad for DC as a whole, because how can they come back from having a film that like they're touting as this great film, but then they can't even figure out a way to get people to go to the theater to watch it? Like, they need to come up with like some massive marketing stuff that they haven't done in a very long time, because they've been screwed over too many times with doing, spending too much on marketing for some of these films. But they really need to come up with a way to get people to really want to see this. And I understand why they're focusing so heavily on Michael Keaton's Batman, is because, one, it's Batman. Two, it's going to get that nostalgic, aspect that, some people are really going to gravitate towards. But the thing is, they really need to figure out a way to make sure that people actually go see it, so that way the word can spread and people keep talking about it and things like that. It has the potential, if it is a good film, to really do well, because while there's a lot of films that are coming out this summer, it could be like, this is putting it very, very high up there, but it could be the Top Gun Maverick that comes out like one weekend and then just conveniently just stays around the entire summer, because it just keeps getting more and more people just keep watching it and keep watching it. It just never dies for the entire summer. And that's what I'm hoping it, happens, because DC really needs a win, as we talked about a couple episodes back. They need a win. They need it to be a way to, restore faith with what they're doing and where they're going.
Yeah, I think I was going to say, I think that's a legit concern as to getting people to go. I think we've talked about it before. People's interest in the DC brand is kind of really, really low at the moment. But I think the point you mentioned about them really focusing on Michael Keaton in the marketing campaign, I think that's what's really going to carry it and really going to get people to go see it. I kind of underestimated in the past, it's like many years ago, how much of an influence Batman 89 and Michael Keaton had on people. And I think that's because it's more people who are slightly older than me who are really, really, that's kind of their Batman. And so I think those people are really going to turn out to go see this movie. I think the other thing that I'm concerned about is there's always going to be this comparison, because they're using the multiverse concept. There's always going to be the comparison to the recent superhero multiverse movies that have come out, and those have all been Marvel films. And I do think there is a bit of subconscious bias people have towards Marvel, in that they see the Marvel name on something and kind of rate it a little higher than it actually is sometimes. And so I think on some level they're going to compare it to that. But we'll see if that has any impact on the movie. Maybe they see this and think, wow, it's great. And then I think, as you said, word of mouth is going to maybe carry the box office run deeper from release date.
Yeah, I was just to piggyback off that, like, I have had people at work who kind of know, like, I'm a big comic book guy and a big Batman fan. They have come up to me and say, hey, have you seen, like, this trailer for this new Batman movie they call? And I'm like, well, it's not Batman. Like, there's a couple of Batman in it. It's the Flash, and he goes back to another universe, blah, blah, blah. But I do think, like, to me, that's a good sign, like, that kind of people who really aren't, like, as in deep into this stuff as we are, are seeing it and are excited for it. And just another thing, like you were saying, Dustin, like to spread the word, like how are we not getting a fast food tie-in with a Flash movie? Like I think it's kind of common sense right there.
And it's not like McDonald's or other places don't do things with PG-13 movies. Like it used to be a thing back in the day where if it was rated PG-13, they wouldn't do it. Now that's not the case. McDonald's does stuff with practically every Marvel film that comes out, which is always rated PG-13. So it's not like it can't be done. It's just they need to figure it out. I know part of the problem is because the other side of it is like there is obviously action figures. There's some other stuff that's coming for the release of, merchandise wise, that's coming for the release of the thing. But because the projects have been pushed around so many different times and release dates have changed, that's one of the reasons I should say that it is very difficult for them to really maximize the marketing. And hopefully we won't run into that as, barring any sort of, new global pandemic that randomly destroys the entire production of everything. The reality of it is like, everything got shifted. This movie was supposed to come out ages ago, and it got shifted around, and it might have landed where it is right now just because of how it could potentially adjust things for the future. But ultimately, it's interesting because, Lego has always done sets related to the films, and they have done lots of different ones for Marvel. They did things for the Batman last year, but they also released them in November of 2021 rather than in March of 2023 when the film came out, because the film was originally supposed to come out in October of 2021. So they had the slots on the shelves that holiday season to have those Batman sets on shelves, even though it made no sense for it to be out so much earlier than the film itself. But that was the same case with all the Spin Master toys and some of the McFarlane toys. They were coming out like months in advance because of when they just had things planned ahead of time. And with the Flash, we know that there's stuff related to Spin Master and McFarlane. There hasn't been any Lego stuff from DC in such a long time, and I think part of the reason for that is because they've adjusted their release schedule, and any Lego set that they had that could potentially be connected to a film project, they would have had in production ages ago, and then it might end up, or it might just gotten completely scrapped if the film project was got delayed for like 2 years. So I don't know. I in some ways I hope the best for the Flash. But at the same time, because of all these date shiftings, I feel like that's one of the reasons why stuff has been getting like messed up so badly when it comes to marketing and the necessity. Like, and I've said this before, but the necessity to have so many movies in such a short amount of time, like I don't understand why they couldn't have spaced it out a little bit more than they did, where they have so many films coming out. They've got 4 theatrical films this year alone. Last year, if you don't count DC Super Pets, they had Black Adam as well, and then the Batman. Like it seems like it's a lot in a very short amount of time. And then the other side of it is at all of these different projects that are coming out are coming from different aspects of like who put them together, who's the producers behind them. It's kind of like the fallout of what happened prior to putting somebody in charge. So our last bit of Gunn Watch stuff is a small update on the Superman project that was supposed to be produced by J.J. Abrams, written by Ta-Nehisi Coates. And this project was to feature a black Superman. And this project James Gunn was asked about, and he basically said it is not something that he is saying it isn't happening, but he's not saying it is happening either. He did, however, say that, once they present the project, if it works, they will be all in on it, despite the fact that they're rebooting Superman with Superman Legacy, because they'll treat it as if it's an Elseworlds project, just like the Joker, so that it kind of leaves that door open for a lot of other Elseworld projects potentially to happen, because he's saying this could be one of those projects, and Joker is not the only one. We know that the Batman Matt Reeves stuff is taking place in its own little bubble It has nothing to do with the mainstream Batman that's going to be taking place in the actual DC film series that's coming out. But this could be another project like Joker where it's just, one-off or by itself that just happens. And as long as it's a good project that they really truly believe will do well, it'll make its way out.
J.J. Abrams, man, he's been not done much since he signed that big deal or whatever. Between this and Cape Crusader, we haven't seen anything.
Yeah. We haven't seen a whole lot of anything from him on anything. Anyway, yeah. I remember there was a big deal. For those who don't know, he signed a $500 million exclusive deal with Warner Brothers prior to the Discovery merger. And one of the first things that got brought up when Warner Brothers and Discovery merged was, let's look over these exclusive deals and what we're actually getting out of them, because J.J. Abrams hasn't produced a lot of content. He had some series that were in the works. A lot of the series didn't actually get greenlit, or they got greenlit and then they ended up getting canceled because of too high of budgets. And there hasn't been a lot that's come of it. So Cape Crusader and this potential project are two of the ones that we would obviously be talking about because of their connection to the DC universe. But it is extremely interesting to see how little has come from that overall deal that cost so much money. Back when AT&T loved throwing money at the wall, but at the same time wanted to sell away, a profitable aspect of the company like WB Games. So,
I'm pretty sure the Warner Brothers business people want to see some return on their investment. And I think if there are multiple versions of Batman that are going to be out there, because we know there is a Batman and Damian movie that's going to be coming out, and that's going to be kind of parallel to the stuff that Matt Reeves is doing with Robert Pattinson's Batman. I don't see why there can't be another Superman film that comes out. I have some concern about Ta-Nehisi Coates writing it, just because he's a very talented writer for like political science, social science stuff, and I have my issues with that, but that's not for this podcast. But I don't feel like his writing style translates well to comics. He had a run in Black Panther, I believe. And so I don't know that it would translate well to movies either, but I guess we'll have to see. But overall, I think the more Elseworlds take we have that are really character-focused, I mean, that's what we had with Joker, right? And I think that is, at least moderately speaking, a success, both financial and critically. I don't think it's a bad thing to have more of these takes going on.
All right, and with that is going to wrap up this episode of the Batman Universe podcast. Be sure to check out our website, thebatmanuniverse.net, for all kinds of news, original content, reviews, and editorials related to movies, television, video games, merchandise, and everything else related to the Bat fandom, including comics. So be sure to check that out. You can follow us on social media. We are on Twitter, YouTube, Facebook, Instagram, Discord. You can find all of our social links over at the top of the page at thebatmanuniverse.net. If you're interested in sending us an email with an idea of a topic you'd like us to discuss on a future episode, be sure to send that to tbu@thebatmanuniverse.net. We will definitely take those in consideration. And with all of that being said, that is everything for this episode. For BJ, Adil, and myself, thank you so much for listening, and we'll see you guys next time.